There are things humanity knows, there are things it remembers, and there are things it tries to forget. Atlantis is all three at once. 9,000 years ago, long before Egyptian hands touched the first stone of the pyramids, a land existed in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Not an island, a continent larger than Libya and Asia combined. So wrote Plato, so testified the priests of Sais. So whispers the ocean if you know how to listen. And if you think this is merely a legend, wait until the end. Because what we are about to explore together will make you question what you believe to be true. If topics like these interest you, mysteries of the ancient world, civilizations that vanished without a trace, questions that official science prefers not to ask, subscribe to the channel. Here we dive where it's dark and uncomfortable, and that's precisely where it gets most interesting. But let's return to where it all began, to the very beginning, to the moment when God still walked the earth and fell in love with mortal women. Poseidon, lord of the seas, saw her on the summit of a hill. Her name was Cleito. She was mortal, he was a god, and he fell in love the way only immortals do, completely, with no way back. To protect her from the rest of the world, Poseidon did what only a god could do. He reshaped geography itself. Concentric rings rose around the hill, 3 belts of sea, 2 belts of land, alternating like layers, like walls, like boundaries between his beloved and danger. No mortal foot could step there without permission. He created a separate world within the world, for her alone. Cleito bore him 10 sons, 5 pairs of twins. The first was named Atlas. After him, both the land and the ocean surrounding it were named. Poseidon divided the continent among all 10, but Atlas, the eldest, the first, the chosen, ruled over all. Thus was born a federation of kings. Not conquest, not violence, but division, agreement, order established by a god himself. Thus Atlantis was born. And here is what is important to understand from the very beginning. This account does not sound like an allegory. It sounds like a chronicle. It contains names, numbers, generations, systems of governance. Plato did not write this way when he wished to create a philosophical image. He wrote differently. But now, to the architecture. Imagine a city that had no equal in the known world. The capital of Atlantis stood where Poseidon had once protected Cleito, at the very heart of the concentric rings. 3 canals, broad and deep, enclosed by walls of 3-colored stone, white, black, and red. These rocks were quarried from the very depths of the island, and their natural alternation created a pattern that seemed intentional, as if the island were building itself. The walls were coated with tin, silver, and that very metal about which we know almost nothing, orichalcum. It gleamed like living fire. Its value was surpassed only by gold. What was it? An alloy? An unknown mineral? The question remains open. At the very heart of the city, on the sacred hill of Cleito, stood the temple of Poseidon, a roof of ivory, columns and floor of solid gold. Inside, a statue of the god on a chariot drawn by 6 winged horses, so tall it touched the ceiling. Around it, hundreds of golden nereids riding dolphins. Behind the temple, 2 springs, one of hot water, one of cold. Royal baths, baths for the common people, separate ones for the horses. Take note of this detail. It is the most inconvenient one for those who believe this to be fiction. Who invents plumbing for horses? The Atlanteans knew what comfort was, and they abused that knowledge. Here Plato does what every great story does before catastrophe. He slows down. He begins to describe not what is, but what it has become. The first generations of Atlanteans, descendants of a god and a mortal woman, retained something of both. They were great, they were wise, they governed justly. But with each new generation, this mixture was diluted. The human within them absorbed the divine, slowly, imperceptibly, like water seeping through stone. And the moment came when Zeus looked upon Atlantis and saw not greatness, but pride. He summoned the gods to a council. What exactly he said, we do not know. Plato's dialogue, Critias, breaks off mid-sentence, literally, as if someone had torn out the pages, as if certain words had no right to exist on paper. For 2 millennia, scholars have debated, is this an unfinished manuscript or deliberate silence? But what happened after the gods' council, we know for certain. In the course of one terrible night and one day, Plato writes exactly that, and every word here carries weight. Not gradually, not through years of decline, not through the slow retreat of the sea. One night, one day, the island sank beneath the water, completely, forever. Along with it vanished 9,000 warriors who had defended Athens from the Atlantean assault in the last great battle. The earth opened and swallowed them. The gods took the righteous and the guilty alike. Because that is how the end of ages works. It does not discriminate. The Atlantic Ocean still stands over that very place. 3 kilometers deep. 3 kilometers of salt silence. And we still do not know what is there. But here is where the real mystery begins. Plato was a Greek writing in the 4th century BC. His source was Solon, the great Athenian lawgiver, who heard this account from Egyptian priests in Sais around 590 BC. A long chain, but not so long as to dismiss. Now consider this. The people of the Canary Islands, the Guanches, had legends of a sunken land to the west of them, independently, without Plato, without Greek texts. The Aztecs spoke of Aztlan, a lost homeland somewhere to the east, across the ocean. Berber tribes of North Africa preserved a memory of Attal, a sunken continent. Even in Celtic tradition, there is Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth, which sank beneath the waves. Different peoples, different continents, different languages. The same memory. Coincidence is a word for those who are afraid of the truth. These cultures did not read one another. They had no shared trade routes that could explain borrowing. They preserved independent recollections of the same thing. And the only explanation that requires no additional assumptions is that all of them remember something real, something that truly happened, something so immense that human memory could not bury it even across 9,000 years. Oral tradition is not a fairy tale for children. It is a system for preserving critically important knowledge. What peoples preserved as myth often turned out to be memory of real catastrophes. The Trojan War, the flood, volcanic eruptions that destroyed entire civilizations. We know this now. We know that behind a legend there may stand a geological fact. So the question of Atlantis is not a question of naivety, it is a question of method. And this is where the divers enter the stage. 1968 Eggs, Bimini Island, the Bahamas. Diver Jay Manison descends into the water and sees something that should not be there. Even rows of massive stone blocks stretching for hundreds of meters along the seabed. Regular geometry, a curved angle, parallel lines, like a street, like a wall, like the foundation of something enormous. Official science said, a natural formation. Coastal limestone that fractures along natural joints sometimes produces rectilinear structures. Perhaps. But here is what is inconvenient. Back in the 1930s, visionary Edgar Cayce made a specific prediction. He said that traces of Atlantis would be found near Bimini Island, and he named the year. 1968, the same year, the same place. What to make of this, you decide. But dismissing it as coincidence becomes increasingly difficult. 2001. Researchers from ADC discovered geometric structures on the floor of the Caribbean Sea, off the coast of Cuba, at depths of 600 to 700 meters. Pyramids, rectangular buildings, regular streets. Their scale, larger than any ancient city that ever existed on the surface of the Earth. Research began, data collection commenced, and then funding stopped. The study was never completed. To this day, these things happen, and here is where we stand today. We have explored less than 5% of the ocean floor. 95% is terra incognita. Darkness, pressure, silence. Anything could lie there. And perhaps the answer to humanity's oldest question lies there too. Were we the first? Plato said, and this is critically important, this is truth, not fiction. Not perhaps, not they say. A direct statement. His students said, allegory, a philosophical lesson about pride and punishment. For 2 millennia, these two positions have stood facing each other, and neither has prevailed. Write in the comments, What do you believe? Is Atlantis myth or reality? Because this question is not as simple as it seems. It concerns not only an island, it concerns how we treat knowledge we cannot prove, how we handle memory that does not fit our maps. Atlantis is not simply a lost land. It is a mirror, and in it we see ourselves, our fear of the unknown, our arrogance before nature, our inability to admit that we know far less than we think. The first generations of Atlanteans, according to Plato, were great precisely because they remembered their origins. They knew they had received something priceless, and they carried it carefully. But each successive generation forgot a little more, grew more self-assured, more convinced that it was the pinnacle, rather than a link in a chain. And this is recognizable. This is not a myth about ancient people. It is a myth about us. The ocean does not forget. It simply stays silent, 3 kilometers deep, and there may lie everything we considered legend. Golden nereids on dolphins, a temple that touched the sky, a city that had no equal, or perhaps only darkness, pressure, and silence. But here is what is true in any case. We have not yet looked, not truly. 5% is not an exploration. It is a glance through a keyhole into a room about whose contents we have already drawn conclusions. Atlantis does not ask to be believed. It simply waits. On the bottom, in the darkness, beneath 3 kilometers of salt silence. And it is in no hurry. The question is, are we? Will we manage to ask while there is still someone to answer? We have explored 5%. 95 still lies ahead. And there, in the darkness, under pressure, in silence, perhaps stands the answer. Or another question, even greater, even harder, even older. That is precisely what makes the search worth it.